This is the Uptick Newswire Stock Day podcast, sponsored by InvestorsHangout.com. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube to stay up to date on penny stock news and interviews, public information on OTC, pink sheets, and microcap stocks from around the world, with your host, Everett Jolly.
On today's show, I'm bringing you back a returning guest. He was on my show back in June of this year. We're talking no other than BioElectronics Corp. You can find them on the OTC markets under the ticker symbol BIEL. And with us today is the president and CEO of the company, Andy Whelan. Andy, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you for having us back. I really appreciate it. Get the opportunity to update everyone.
Well, yeah. You know, since the last time you were on the show, you released a couple of press releases. And one is, what is the FDA Opiate Innovation Challenge? So what is that exactly, and why is that important to BioElectronics?
Well, I think it's extremely important, and it's definitely would be transformational with the company. We've tried over the years, actually, to get an FDA adequately clinical study that we could submit to the FDA to get an indication of use for opioid sparing. I thought I died and went to heaven when I found out the FDA actually started their own program. And it's important to have the imprimatur of someone like the FDA, the state of Maryland or New Jersey, that gives the study credence.
Absolutely.
And so I think what's important about it is that we've noticed in our UK registry of data of users of the product that about 40% of the people using the product were on opioids. Kind of stunned me for the UK market, but and what we found is really profound. That we went back and looked at those opioid users in our study when they used the ActiPatch. We found about 25% of them got a slight reduction in opioid use. 50% got, including the next group, a moderate to reduction in use. 75%, had significant, and 25% of them, actually 23%, got off the opioids completely by using the ActiPatch. What's important about that is that doctors need something else to give the patient to reduce the pain. They don't care, the government's trying to tell them, don't give them the opioids, and the patient's sitting in the office crying. So they do what they, think's right. What's important is, here's what our focus is, and I think we're going to get this done because we have good data. The question's going to be how much additional clinical, if the FDA wants some, or they'll take our real world evidence. The approach we're taking is that post-operative pain is there's 50 million surgeries in the U.S. inpatient in the hospital, not counting the outpatient. And what's important about that is that 80% of them have post-operative pain, and our device will reduce that pain. You slap it on post-surgery, and it'll accelerate the healing, but it'll also reduce the pain, so they don't have to put them on the opioids.
Right.
And we're extremely cost effective, and we have some good data on that. Like I mentioned, we have the users that thing. B. Braun in our UK in the hip and knee replacement procedures. We're getting they're using it pre-surgery to get the patient ready for it. They're using it post-op, and they're using it for rehabilitation. And we're still getting 5 to 7 days accelerated healing when we use our device. I mean, consistently, we always get a 50% reduction in drug use by using the device, both in clinicals and in our registry data. So I think that, we have good evidence. The question is just going to be how much evidence the FDA wants. The profound thing to that is the FDA, we assume, will go out and tell the doctors and say, look, before you give them the opioids, here's what you should give them, and here's the ActiPatch. And we're extremely cost effective. I mean, we'll be selling to the hospitals at a very low, half the price with trade discounts and all.
Well, let's stay on that subject for a second, the ActiPatch. You know, I wanted to know if you could give us maybe a sales status update in the United Kingdom, the U.S., and international distributors. Also, maybe talk about your new contract out there in New Zealand and Australia.
All right. Let me mention one other thing on the FDA, on the opioids. We have already done the pre-submittal on a post-operative pain reduction approval on a 510K from the FDA. We should be able to get that done sometime early next month and get it submitted. But we have good clinical data already from our breast augmentation study. We have 2 C-section studies, one of which is published and the other one which we're completing now. So we'll have, and you know, God willing, so all we have to do is give them the post-operative study, and that'll get us get into that 245 million opioid prescriptions annually. So, all right, to go back to your question, which I think is important. The key thing in the UK that we're doing is we did get the National Health Service clearance for the product to be reimbursed. In the UK, which is socialized medicine, 80 to 90% of prescriptions are paid for by the National Health Service. By getting the clearance, we get out of the OT. So we made a decision to pull out of the OTC or the retail market and just put all the product behind the counter. That does 2 things. One, it gets us access to every pharmacy in the UK. So all 14,000 pharmacies can order the product in from the wholesaler, get it, and fill the prescriptions. The other thing it does, it gives us a better pricing structure for the product behind the counter. The task right now is, and that's our softness in current sales, because we cut off the Boots and the Lloyds and so forth, and we're out detailing the physicians and advertising to the consumers to get them to get a prescription and get it paid for. I mean, 80-90% of people are getting it free. Even if it's not free, they're going to get it for £8.90, which is, a third of what the retail cost was. So while it's given us some softness, over time it'll give us significant sales. Because, in the UK, 100,000 people go to the doctor every day because they have musculoskeletal pain. We need to fill that void.
And how is the U.S. sales and other international distributor sales?
Okay. The U.S., we're to be candid, I'm sitting on it. I'm pretty confident that we're going to be able to get a partner. And so the FDA, we have our 510K musculoskeletal pain in at the FDA. That broad FDA clearance gets us access to, instead of just like we have knee for a thing, there's 42 million people, 60 million with back pain. The knee pain's only 25 million, neck pain's 19, hips 9, shoulders 11 million. We're talking with carpal, even things like carpal tunnel, we'll be able to advertise, promote, and get the device used for. So we're looking at 125 million patient market in the U.S. Rather than do it half-ass, I guess, sorry to say. Half-ass is I'm reasonably confident we're going to get a U.S. marketing partner. So we've been essentially going slow, not spending money on advertising and promotion in the U.S. until we get the U.S. FDA clearance on musculoskeletal pain, hopefully get a partner. Otherwise, we'll have to finance the advertising and marketing going forward. So the U.S. market will be very good. It's just taken more time. And we have not had, we put the application in with the FDA in July, and we have not had any comments or questions. So we assume it's moving along at a good pace, and we think, maybe, as early as next month or sooner even, we'll get that market clearance and hopefully get that partner.
My guest today is Andy Whelan. You've been listening to. He's the CEO and president of BioElectronics Corp. You can find him on the OTC market under the ticker symbol BIEL. Go ahead, Andy.
All right. On the other international sales, we actually do making good progress with Mundy Farm in Australia, and they're getting clearance for New Zealand also. And then we're picking up 5 additional countries, which will be Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Singapore, etc. So we'll have 7 right now, and we hope, and we're working on getting them to expand. They're clearly a decentralized company, so we're out there working with the individual subsidiaries or Mundy Pharma entities. And we have an open dialogue with a group that's doing Eastern Europe, and that looks very promising too. I don't expect to see very significant sales from Mundy Farm for a couple of months, but they will be significant. They have something north of 120 sales reps out there in those existing markets, and we expect hopefully we can grow those markets with them.
Product license agreements with Dr. Scholl's, Bears, and others. What's the status on that?
Well, Dr. Scholl's is moving along. It's the product won't get into the market until sometime next year, but it's negotiations with giants, and they just take time. But I'd say it's moving well. We've had several meetings with them, and we have another group that came in that we think will give us very broad coverage on the ActiPatch product, and possibly on the lay product also, which is the menstrual pain product.
We're running out of time for today's interview, but in closing, what would you like my listeners to take away from this interview, Andy?
Well, I think the company is greatly underappreciated or undervalued. We've developed a unique therapy or neuromodulation therapy, which includes, neurological disorders, which chronic pain is of it. But we also have significant opportunities, as I mentioned, in a menstrual pain, overactive bladder, and the list goes on. So we'll be an extremely busy little company over the next couple of years, and hopefully with the exceptional growth.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show. It's always a pleasure to have you on my show. I wish you nothing but continued success. Take a look at BioElectronics Corp. They trade on the OTC markets under the ticker symbol BIEL. They're trading at about 0.2 of a cent, maybe closer to 0.3 of a cent. Andy, I hope that you come back on the show here in about 40 or 50 days. Maybe you give us an update on that 510 and bring us up to speed.
I don't want to give you an update. I want to tell you it's done. But I appreciate it. Good talking to you again. Appreciate the opportunity.
This program is entirely sponsored and produced by Uptick Newswire, LLC, which is responsible for the content. The opinions and information provided on this program are those of the guests and those of the respective companies they represent, and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff or management of Uptick Newswire. Uptick Newswire encourages all listeners of this program to do their due diligence and research when determining investment strategies that will work for them, or to seek the assistance of an investment professional. The guests of this program may have paid for its distribution and are not directly affiliated with Uptick Newswire or this station.